So it's 6 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting of the MRUSD Unified School District's Board of Directors for September 4th to order. As I said, it's 6 o'clock. Let's do an agenda review. Any revisions requested for the agenda or needed? Hearing none, the agenda is accepted without objection. Please join me for a pledge of allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Are there any visitors in the room?
We've got one.
One visitor, okay. So we're at the visitor section of our agenda. So it's the public comment visitor section of the meeting. It's an opportunity for community members to address issues of concern about policy, budget, or administrative matters, or to share ideas about how we can work together to improve our schools. We value input and respect divergent views. We ask you to limit your remarks to time constraints of 3 minutes per topic and refrain from airing grievances with individual members of the school community, including respecting the privacy of the students and parents. Those attending remotely may type in their full name in the comment section if they wish to speak. During the meeting, comments will be disabled. Please state your name prior to speaking. So, someone wish to speak?
Hello, I am Dr. Jennifer Williamson. I'm a resident of St. Albans Town, and my son goes to SATEC. I wanted to thank the whole school board for all the work you've done over the last couple of years, working towards the mission statement and the vision statement. I was really pleased with those. But I was surprised at the last meeting when a new visitor attended with the sole purpose of trying to convince the board to cease any work towards equity and inclusion in the school community. As a member of the community who volunteered countless hours to the community conversations, the equity summit, developing the 5 district goals, and listening to both parents and students in MRUSD schools, I can also assure you that my neurodivergent son is not the only student who needs all students to learn how to treat people with respect and compassion. I filled out the input form on the new vision statement and mission statement and was pleased with what has been written thus far, and as they seem to align with the district goals that were developed with community input. Students cannot learn in an environment in which they feel unsafe, and school is frequently the only place where some learn how to treat their peers compassionately. School is more than just about learning penmanship and math. It is the first place in which our children and adolescents learn how to interact in the world without the constant supervision of their parents. It is where they have the opportunity to meet new people and learn how to be better adults than previous generations. Learning equitable and inclusive social behaviors makes our students better citizens and creates a better community. I don't have the privilege of coming from a well-known Franklin County family and benefiting from that familiarity, but my son is a student of Maple Run Unified School District, and I am a business owner and tax-paying resident of St. Albans, and I want my school to make this community better, to churn out respectful and emotionally intelligent adults who see the value in our differences rather than fostering intolerance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Anyone else wish to speak? Anyone remotely? John?
No one online, Mother.
No one online? Okay. All right, then we will move on to the consent agenda. There are 2 items on the consent agenda: approval of minutes and media packet. I do have a couple things on the minutes. Line 26, the person's name is Chevalier, not whatever was there, Trevalier, I think, or something. And then on line 120, it should read, approve the expenditure of up to $900,000, not of $900,000. And those are my two items that need to be corrected. And with those two corrections, the consent agenda can be accepted if there are no other objections. Thank you. Okay, reports to the board. The first item is the student board representatives report.
Okay.
Who's here?
With me, I have Ruby and Riley. They're new and we'll introduce them in just a second. Anyone take a moment and say thank you for saying that? Those were some nice words. I appreciated that. After last meeting, I echo everything that you said. Today, the Student Voice Committee, which is a group that we were all a part of, had our first meeting. It was great to see everyone again and start back up after a restful summer and get back into the swing of things. At the meeting, we discussed some of our projects that we want to do, some of the goals, outcomes, and we did some team building circles. And we also have some new members joining us, and I will let them introduce themselves, and after you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Hi everyone, I'm Riley Dexter. I'm a sophomore at Bellows Creek Academy, and I'm a part of the Student Voice. One thing that I would really love to do this year is just to advocate for students. I think it's really important that everyone has a voice. I just would really like that, guys.
I'm Ruby Kennedy. I'm also a sophomore at BFA. I just think it's really important to bring up student voices up to like this level. I know there have been times where I wish I was just heard, so I'm really thankful for this group and I'm glad I'm in it.
Thank you. Any questions for our students? Okay, very good, we'll move on.
Do we want to go and introduce ourselves to the new student representatives?
Good idea, why don't you start?
Okay, I'm Charlie Brooks, and I've got two kids in the district, and this is my second school year on the board.
Hi, Ruby and Riley. We sat together, I just didn't get there today. Superintendent.
I'm Suzanne Kenyon. I'm a representative of St. Albans, and I have a son at SATEC that is 12, and welcome.
Hi, my name is Joanna DeRose, and I think it's my seventh, I don't know,
About that, yeah.
6th or 7th year on the school board. And I worked in education for 20 plus years, and now I do private practice counseling, and I live in Fairfield.
Hi, I'm Amanda Giroux. I'm a representative of St. Albans Town, and I have one child in the district, and this, I believe, is my second year on the board, and I'm glad you are able to join us.
Jessica Frost. I've met both of you before, but and you know who my kids are, but I have one left at BFA who's a freshman, and I represent the town.
I'm Jessica Bobchowski. I have one child who attends partially part-time at SATEC, and I've been on about 6 months.
My name is Carly Fenderson. I'm a brand new kindergartner at City School, and this is my second year on board.
I'm Mary Ann Doobie, I represent Fairfield, and I have no children. They're all grown. And this is my first real year of school.
I'm Jack McCarthy. I have 2,600 students. One grandchild at City School. And I've had 50 years in education. And I'm glad to be retired at this point. I'm the youngest member of the board, by the way. And thank you for representing the students. We learn much from student input, believe me. Students have much to say and usually right on point. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. My name is Gilda Canella French, and I've been on the board for a while. I'm your chair tonight, and I live in St. Albans. Thank you, students, for coming, and as Jack said, your input is very valuable. All right, I'm going to move on to reports to board B, which is first day of enrollment. We have an attachment 6B, and is this you, Bill, or John?
No, this is me.
Okay,
John gets all the
thank you.
fun learning data, I just have the demographic data. So you'll see one of the things that's starting to happen in Maple Run, it's been really happening since 2020. It ebbs and flows, and we had a dip in 2021. But from 2020, FY 2020 to FY 2025, which we're in now, on first day enrollment, so we'll get better enrollment figures come our what's known as our October 1 child count, where things stabilize. So not everything's stabilized right now, and as I've said to the board many years with this report, this is more of an idea of where we're going, but not hard data. It becomes much harder. It becomes much more solidified data, and enrollment stabilizes usually after the second week of school. So this is the first day. It is down about 1% over the past 4 years. So we're slowly losing enrollment. Right now on this first day, you'll see we're at, if you look all the way under FY25, we're at 2,557. And since 2020, we've lost 118 students, or about 1% every year. So if we're losing 1% a year, that's about 25 kids each year. You may ask, where is that happening? The biggest decline has been within the city school population. Right now, the high school is going up, and you will see some, if you particularly look at grades 3 and 4, you will see that the overall population for the district is much lower. Usually we're around 170 students before in pre-K 8 per grade level, and then we bump up into the 225 to 240 at the high school. The high school is actually going to increase some more with what's coming from 8th grade and 7th, 8th grade. We usually, as we get to 9th grade, the reason of that differential is the towns that tuition into us. So the nice thing, the good news on all that, when you look at our pre-K numbers, which you see pre-K 3 and pre-K 4, with just within our own schools and what we pay tuition for, we have some nice numbers. That 130 is a very healthy number because usually we gain 30 to 40 kids. What that aren't either students that are in our pre-Ks or that we're paying for them to attend a private pre-K. So that I'm optimistic about what is to come, but we have some places where we'll be losing some students as well.
Thank you. Any questions for Bill on the enrollment information?
Do we know
This
why?
information will be important when we do our budget processes too, so keep in mind.
Cooper had a question.
I have a good question. Do we know why we're having a decrease? Because even the homeschooling numbers aren't adding up to that. Like, where are the 1% of 25 kids going?
I don't know that we're actually have kids that are out there that we're losing the 1%. It's just decreasing. I can't give you the reason why.
Okay.
We do get alerted of the homeschool enrollment.
Mm-hmm.
I have to go check it again and what our homeschool enrollment's been across the district, but I think it's been pretty flat since FY20.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to increase. That's I'm wondering where the kids are going, especially like you see a dip within 3rd and 4th grades. Those are such crucial years for fundamental.
I don't think they're deciding to go somewhere else. I think it was a lack of population, and we are nowhere near as severe as the most of the state in the decrease in enrollment that's happening. It's around 3 to 4% per year. There's a real downward trend, and I'm going to talk later about an education data profile the secretary did a week ago, and it's in your VSBA weekly update that you might want to look at.
Thank you. Bill, does this data for first day enrollment get submitted anywhere, or is this for our use and there's another official enrollment for official student count that comes up later, right?
That's a great question. Yeah, this is really for our use, so we have an idea. I think it's good for the board to know this right away, where we're at for size. The official one, there's two official ones that affect enrollment for what we get for state support in the dollar yield per student. And that, the biggest one of that is the fall, what we call the fall census. Sometimes call it, I may slip in and call it October 1, that's an old name, or the 40th day, which is a really old name with it. And then there's one done at the end of the year. But that census that's done in the fall really drives the amount of money that we get per student from the state in the dollar yield piece. And it's really a dollar yield, but we have factors in there with our total number of students.
And in your experience, does it vary much?
Yes.
Fall census?
Yep. That's why I say this is an estimate to keep for the board to be up to date at the beginning of the school year, but not one to say this is how we're budgeting. And we need to wait for those numbers to come, which we'll get back and verify from the state in December.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to have one of these with the fall data next to each of the years.
Yeah, the other
Just
thing,
for trend.
no, but it would be good to kind of say like, what do we see? The thing that now with the new way in which we count students, with weighted students, to have that next to it as well, because that's what affects the budget.
Right.
Because we could have the same number of students have a very different weighted student count, because it's based on student demographics.
Just to get like an idea of the general size of the district, I would assume that in terms of Vermont, most of the larger districts are in Chittenden County. Are we a large district for Vermont?
We are, and you're all leading me back to this data profile from the secretary, which is great, so I'll bring that up as we talk about another topic. But I looked at it the other day, and we're the 6th largest district in the state as of FY23. So, and it's really interesting that there are two very large districts around close to 4,000, which is Champlain Valley and Essex Westford. And then it drops right down to there's 6 districts we're among that are all in that probably 2,900 to 2,500 size. And those are districts such as, sorry, it was Burlington and CBU that are there. I misspoke. Then we get to Essex, South Burlington ourselves, Mount Mansfield, and Southwest Vermont.
Thank you. Any other questions for Bill? Okay, so moving on to old business. We have planned for meeting board goals. Your goals are attachment 7A. So there's a calendar on the website that has the events, right, that are going to be happening to date, what we know so far. So what we need to figure out at some point, and we may not know the answer right now, but if anyone's planning to attend any of these events and whether or not they'd be willing to use, board reflection forms that we talked about at the end of last school year, because those are a way to monitor our compliance with the goals. So I don't know if anybody has looked at that and knows that they're going to go, but if you are and will be willing to do the reflection form, that would be wonderful. And we can report those out at the end of each meeting as we proceed.
Nilda, could we just take a minute and show everyone where that is on the website so everyone knows where you're looking?
Absolutely.
So John, pull that up and present that for a minute.
So if you just scroll down past the top header, you can see there's events here, and if you click see all events, you can see it basically as a chronological list by month, and you can switch between the months really easily and scroll down.
And Aaron is populating these with, there's non-athletic events, there's a whole other athletics calendar. But Aaron Rushlow is populating this with things that she thinks the general community would want to see, but also that would be places you might want to go for an observation. So she's deliberately trying to capture all those for things that she said, and she's not trying to judge too much, but just like these are all the other events that are going on outside the athletic events. So there are athletic calendars, but those are in different spots.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I know that maybe at the next meeting, people can come with something they might be thinking they might be going to this fall.
That would be great.
If that's a task everyone could do, is take a look at that and come back and say where they might go do an observation.
Yep, perfect.
Okay.
Okay, the next item is organization of board meeting. That's attachment 7B, and that's a complicated but informative spreadsheet that Bill's gonna take us through a little bit.
So we talked about this last year at the retreat a little bit and giving reports via the school district goals. And so what we did here was, this is the board calendar for the year, and you will see it's color coded by goal area. You will also see when there's some things that aren't goal but are a report, which is the quantitative data. You've seen that the past couple of years from John and Alexis and others, and I know there will be others that are part of that. But that you'll see each goal area, and I've been working with the leadership team to talk about how it won't be John, myself, and Alexis for all these different areas, but members of the leadership team or other members of the school district staff. So we're working on that. We're trying to create a standard template, which will come right off the strategic plan, which will look at what are the strategies that were suggested there and what are the evidence that under each goal area, and that's what we'll talk to. And it'll basically be analysis of where we are now and where we're supposed to be, and do a gap analysis and what actions are we taking. Some of those, as you may recall, we talked about we can't lift all 5 goals in the same year. So there may be some that we say, hey, this is the little bit we're doing this year, but it's not as intense as other goal areas. And that was in the OKR document that John had you approve at the last meeting. You'll see some of that there, and we can bring that back. What you see in the next 2 columns to the right are either reports or operational pieces that the board does. And so those are just kind of some of the pieces that we do there.
The board does?
That we do, like we talk about, some of these that's a bad way of saying it, thank you for asking me. These are agenda items that are usually on board meetings, that there are usually board discussions. Okay? Thank you for asking. A nice way of saying, Phil gets a little more specific.
So you're saying that we often ask about the DLO report during that time period?
Yeah, these are different where you ask for those.
Gotcha.
So those are pieces that are they're kind of like standing agenda items that happen at that time, that aren't a standing agenda that happens every meeting.
Yeah.
But we know every year it's gonna happen at that time. And sometimes it's annual, sometimes it's twice a year, sometimes it's, and so you'll see that in those 2 columns.
And will we be able to expect information at that time?
Yeah, that's the piece that we're expecting to do.
Okay, so not that we're just asking about it, but that there'll be
those
preemptively information about it.
Yeah, the work to do.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
And then, one of the things we talked about at the last meeting that you asked for, that Charlie and Nilda and I worked on, is the column that's called Budget Development Plan Topics. So we're starting that tonight. We're going to be talking about the FY26 budget context under new business. So we'll be talking there. And then all the way to the right, we had talked about last year about doing doing education sessions for the board. And we did 2 last year, 1 in a board meeting, 1 outside of a board meeting. So those are those 3rd Mondays that you talked about having those, and that those are on Zoom for an hour for an educational session. So these are the topics in which we had. It was about the order of importance. I will tell you that Nilda and Charlie and I talked about the staffing models and implementation, and that we thought it was better to move that up. That was on the list, but it was a little further down, so we reordered that a little bit when we looked at the budget development plan. So this was a way of trying to say, okay, let's make sure we're all in alignment, we all know what's coming. It's a board count. Not that this is, rock solid, we can't do something else, we can't move things, but it was just a way of having that organizational document. We do it with the leadership team for our leadership team meetings. I know my colleagues, the principals do it for their buildings, for their year, for what they're doing for meetings. So it's just a guide to use for a direction.
Okay. I was just wondering if there was, this is kind of, just came to me this second, but is there a way to, somehow code them afterwards with either a color or something that indicates that they've occurred? Because as you say, maybe we have to make changes, you know, so, you know, green for go, done, or whatever, just a thought. Not, you know, doesn't have to happen, but it keeps the document a living document, you know, and helps us kind of look at progress. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, any questions on that? Hearing none, and then move on to access control purchase. So, as the agenda states, the board approved on June 5th, 2024, access controls for the doors. There was a delay in receiving the product, so it's not yet installed, and therefore it's not yet paid for. So instead of being paid for by the budget that we just left, because it just got closed out, those monies are going to move into the capital reserve fund, as is practice and required. And so now we have to have a motion to approve the purchase from the capital reserve fund. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the purchase from MEI Electrical Contractors and System Integrators in the amount of $155,000 out of the capital reserve in fiscal year 2025.
So moved, Joanna.
Thank you.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second, Nakuma.
Thank you. Any discussion on this? Okay. Take a roll vote. All in favor, say yes. Amanda?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Joanna, excuse me. Carly?
Yes.
Mary Ann?
Yes.
Nakuma?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Gilda votes yes. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is new business. So we have a bank resolution for Collins Curley, which has attachment 8A. And I'm looking for a motion to authorize the bank resolution for Collins Curley at Vermont Trust.
I'll make that
A
motion.
motion. Thanks, Jessica. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? Sort of standard procedure, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so, all in favor, Amanda,
Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Carly,
Yes.
Mary Ann,
Yes.
Nakuma,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
Gilda votes yes. That motion carries. All right, so, the next item on the agenda is, the FY '26 Budget Development Plan, it's attachment 8B. And, Bill is gonna take us through that. And also, well, he's got the information for us, so I'm gonna just say that to you.
Thanks, Nilda. I'm just gonna take this, Charlie. So I'm speaking to, I'm trying to look at everyone down here, but the microphone's that way. So the other thing you might want to have out is the plan itself that we had in the other attachment, so you can go back and forth. One of the things that this document that's in the attachment for this item, as you can see, it's been co-authored by the Vermont School Boards Association, the Superintendent's Association, and the Vermont Business Officers, which is the Business Managers Association. And this came about 2 weeks ago, and I read it, and I thought, this is perfect for our discussion. Because I think it really starts to illustrate what local boards have control over and what the state has control over. And where are the places that you as a board have effect on the tax budget and where you don't. And so I think it's really, if there was one thing, I think especially going into this budget season from last budget season, is really understanding that. and taking time to ask questions and go through it. So I kind of want to go through some sections and just go through it by sections and say what questions do you have, and if it's not clear on here, Bree, please chime in, and if Bree can't answer it and I can't answer it, we'll find someone to get some more information. Because the Vermont tax formula and funding system for schools is very complex. It's not a simple system at all. That there are very few people that really understand it in depth. And most of
So
them.
Bill, if I could just add, so I did read this document, and I agree it's very well done, and I was going to email all board members, Monday night and say, if you have a chance, make sure you read it, because it is so well organized, and even for those of us that are supposedly been around for a while, are supposed to understand some of this, it helped me a lot. And one of the things that it does, and Bill will take us through it, but one of the things it does is give us an idea of where we have the ability to have impact on something and where we don't. And obviously, as builders of the budget, I don't know if that's the proper way of saying that, but we have to look at where we can make an impact. Because if we can't make an impact, then let's not spend too much time on, contemplating it. If you look through it, at the bare minimum, you should at least look through the headers and the key points. It covers a lot of territory. Some of the stuff we've talked about, and some we haven't talked about, but I don't want to steal all your thunder, Bill, but I just wanted to support this document as being a pretty good starting point for us.
Yep, no, I think it's great. So I'm literally going to go through this and page by page, and the biggest thing is understanding these cost drivers that start on page 2. So the first one they go to, which you've heard us say before, it's somewhere between 75 and 80% of our cost in Maple Run is personnel cost. So what are the factors that actually drive that? The number of people that are employed, the salaries that are agreed to, and the cost of the benefits. So those are the 3 pieces that really go into that.
I may have a silly question. Does this include all personnel, central office? And
Everybody,
okay.
everybody.
Okay. Thank
Yep.
you.
Everybody that's part of that. So one of the things that's been happening in FY23, there was about the total you can see on page 3 there. I'm just going to highlight some important facts in here. The total salaries and wages totaled almost $1 billion in Vermont. Assuming an increase of 6% for FY24 and 25, every 1% increase on salaries across the state average adds another $11 million. Because remember, we're funded from a statewide personnel. You say, Bill, why aren't you giving us this in Maple Run? We'll do that next week. Next time we meet, we're going to talk about those cost drivers directly for Maple Run. But in the state, as that increase, that cost for personnel, every 1% increase in cost costs another $11 million to the bottom line, assuming the same number of personnel. Okay. And then, so it talks later on about negotiations, and the number of personnel is really what the school boards have control of. And it also gives you some averages there of Northeast states of the number of pupils enrolled per staff member in public school system. One of the documents that I'm going to talk about in this section, the Secretary of Education did a really nice job. I want to give her kudos on this profile of Vermont's education system. And there's some more data in here that would help support numbers in here about what Vermont's teacher ratio, staff to student ratio is, and how we compare in the nation. This is in your VSBA weekly announcements. It was there. It was called the Vermont Education Data Profile. It came out August 30th. And if you haven't gotten a copy of this, this would be a good thing to get between now and the next meeting. Yeah.
Does it do a good job of making sure that each of the education institutions are starting from the same spot? Meaning, like, what do they consider to be staff members? You know what I mean? Like, are they including SLPs? Are they including guidance? Like, is everybody including all of the same personnel when they're making these ratios?
So there's a National Center for Education Statistics, that's where it's taken from, and the states have to report that data and those data standards to the U.S. Department of Education, which is where the data came from, and we have to, in handbook 2, if I'm correct, right, Bree, we have to follow those federal guidelines on how we report.
So like if we were a Title I school and we were mandated to have Title I personnel, are those personnel also included?
Yes.
And do they drop our numbers down, you know what I mean, in comparison to others?
I don't know that I can say in comparison. Because some schools are Title I, some aren't across the nation. More urban schools are Title I than rural schools in the nation. But I can't, it's really just a direct comparison. There aren't that if-then type of pieces. It's counting the number of teachers, not where they're funded from.
I just meant in terms of it bumps up our personnel, it bumps up the ratio or bumps down the ratio. No, it bumps up the ratio.
Bump down.
Huh?
Down.
Down, bumps
Less
down.
less staff, higher ratio.
Yeah.
An FTE is an FTE, any way you look at it. So if it's funded locally or through grants, it's still an FTE that we have to count in our software system.
And that's true across the nation.
Everybody has to do the same.
Where did you find that packet?
So what I could show you later on, there's an email, you get the weekly report from VSBA, I get it as well. If you go down a ways, you'll see something up at the index, it's called the Vermont Education Profile. It's down about 2/3 through the email, there's a more detailed paragraph with a link to this packet.
Okay.
And if you can't find it, send me an email, I'll be glad to get it for you. Or better yet, ask Aaron, because he'll do it faster than I do. But it's a really, these used to come out years ago, and then they stopped in the 20-teens.
Got it.
And now she's bringing this back, which is, the last person to do this type of work was Rebecca Holcomb, did this type of work, which was great. But I think for all of you as members of the board, and thinking not only Maple Run context, but knowing the Vermont context, but these are two big documents to really understand as we go into budgeting. The next place is health insurance, and I could give Mike the floor, but sorry, Mike, I'm not. He knows all about it. Our spending on health insurance in FY23 was $211 million, and you'll see on page 4 there's some assumptions, but in FY26 they're assuming a 17% increase. We haven't heard yet. You all probably heard the news. It went to press 2 or 3 weeks ago, and Blue Cross and I forget the other one released their rates and where they were going for individuals and small employers, which was, for small employers it was at 22%. Bree and I have talked. We're not expecting to get above 20, but high teens is probably what we're looking at, and so that's another $42 million to the state ed fund, and we'll calculate what that is for here. And we talked about that. Yes, Nilda.
Excuse me, if it were to be at 17%, that would actually be a very slight increase, comparatively speaking, correct? Because isn't it at 16.4 right now, or is that considered?
Go ahead, Bree.
Is 0.6% huge?
This is a huge percentage increase because it's 17% over the previous year. So we are going up every single year drastically.
Yeah, I was just being stupid there for a second. Yeah. Okay, I answered.
That's a good question.
As soon as you said that, I understand. Yeah, thank you.
And this is why I want to go slowly through this. So these questions are great because this is not easy stuff to understand, and it can get complex. The next thing is inflation. We actually hear a lot in the press about inflation, but the inflation rate right now is pretty low. We're not quite down to the Fed wanting to get down to under 3%, but right now we're forecasting like a 3 to 3.2 next year. We'll see how, in November we give you targets and we get estimates from our local energy providers and other areas about what we're looking for in inflation. But it's actually been pretty stable. It was a sharp increase the past couple of years, but we're comparing year to year. So a bunch of those pieces haven't changed.
So, Bill.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So, riddle me this. How can it be, and well, this is probably a whole economics class, so I probably shouldn't even ask, but how can it be that inflation is so low, unemployment is so low, but we can't find anybody to work in many fields, not just in school systems? What's the magic that reconciles all that?
And groceries are so high.
Say it again?
And groceries are so high.
I mean, do people age out of the world, so therefore the numbers are different? You know, it's just one of those concepts that I think is difficult to reckon with.
I agree, and I don't have an answer for you.
Well, work on it, would you?
Just as one piece, and I really hope I'm not like saying this in the opposite of what is actually true, but if unemployment is low, that means that there are fewer people out there looking for jobs, so that would explain part of that, I believe, unless I'm...
Right, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
But doesn't it also mean that there are fewer jobs for people to look for?
No, it's the opposite.
No, it's the opposite. There are more jobs for them to look for than what we have
So
for
maybe-
labor force.
Maybe it's the definition of unemployment rate that makes this work. So the employers submit their number of positions, or people that are looking for work submit information saying I'm looking for work and I can't find it. It's like I said, it's an economics class, so.
Yeah.
Thanks, Charlie, for helping me be more confused.
That's my specialty.
So.
Go ahead, Bill, sorry.
Yeah, no, special education costs, this is a big one for us and for all of the state. Back in 2020, FY24, I believe, is when we moved to a census block system for funding special education. It used to be a reimbursement, so a straight number of kids that were in special ed, you would get a certain percentage of reimbursement. It now doesn't matter the number of students that you have in special ed unless they're intensive needs students. So we get a grant block based on our population. And part of that is because there's a lot of reports in Vermont that we over-identify our students on special education. So part of it, this was some of the fiscal down pressure that was put in, and that we're actually going to get less money every year, but the cost for special education and needs for students is going up. So you can see that there's a prediction that there'll be approximately a $40 million increase each year in special education to the state education fund. So I'm not keeping a tally of all these things, but these are all showing the fiscal pressures on the state fund. And then the next one is probably the one that is the highest risk for Vermont schools, which is facilities. And our building that's the highest at risk is BFA. Our pre-K-8s are in pretty good shape, especially with the work we've been doing this year. But there is over $6 billion worth of unfunded facilities issues across the state of Vermont. And if you've been watching the news, you will see there are 2 schools right now that are educating their students outdoors or in alternate locations. One being Milton because of mold in a situation they tried to fix 10 years ago and did not properly. And I can say that because that's been out in the press. And North Country Union is dealing with the PCB issues and can't be in 2 wings of its 3 wings of its school. Brattleboro, Bellows Falls went through this last year. They have tents on their fields where they're teaching in tents right now, and they're not sure what they're going to do for once it gets to winter time. It's a massive issue. We have buildings that a big way of savings the tax rate in previous years has been not to properly fund facilities. So now we have this $6 billion risk, and we're going to have more, not less. And so as I've said to the board before, when Burlington decided, I shouldn't say decided, but when they had to build a new high school, that affected the tax rate in Maple Run. because it's a statewide funding system. If North Country has, I think they're up in the $4 to $5 million right now, they're gonna have to find that money somewhere. Now, that's a little fraction out of a $2 billion statewide education fund, but it's money that wasn't anticipated. But it's also, we haven't been keeping our facilities up. I can say that we do better than average, I think, here in Maple Run, but we have liabilities in our buildings, big time. And I'm gonna talk later about the liabilities in this building that we're sitting in right now. So we have some big facility issues ourselves, and that we need to tackle. The last one that's here that's not one for us, we are a receiving school for districts that pay tuition. But as you'll see in this profile right here, there's about 3,500 students that our towns pay for private tuition, whether it's in Vermont or outside of Vermont. It's a total of about 9,000 students that are in private schools. And so the district, and let's use, Joan, I'm gonna take your previous district of Sheldon that you worked for, they had to pay tuition, but they don't have control over that high school cost. And so that affects what they can do with their elementary schools. And so that, that tuition piece can be a big impact on some. It's an impact on the state. The state, not so much on the state, because there's a part of the state law that says we'll pay the average Vermont state tuition if it's a private school. Where if it's a public school, you pay the tuition that's being given for that public school. Those are the big cost drivers. There's a lot other here explaining what's going on with the commission and how they're taking a look at that and some of the different education law changes that happened this year. But for me, that was the big part to go through. I'm sure there's probably some questions, and you've all been great about asking as we went, but what questions do you have?
Sorry, does anyone? I'm not jumping in. Just in terms of keeping score of what we have control over and what we don't, on the items identified in the document here, so for collective bargaining, we have two associations that we bargain with. One is locked in for, the rates on one is locked in for this coming year, the other one will be negotiated in the coming months, correct?
Yes, we have, the teachers have another year on their contract, and we'll be negotiating with the ESP for next year.
And if I'm correct, we don't have any control over health insurance, inflation. I'd love to have control over inflation. And special education costs is determined at a level beyond us.
There's a whole piece that it would be great to have Andrea Rasic, the Director of Special Ed, come in and talk to you about the IEP process. We cannot, there's very strict federal law about we can't guide the IEP process for any single kid based on financial restraints. So if the IEP team determines a need for a student or a goal for the student, we can as a district say how we're going to provide that, but we have to come up with that cost. We can't say we aren't going to do that because of financial reasons.
And facilities, we do have at least some degree of control over. And tuition, we do or do not?
Doesn't really affect us, so I would say no. For us, for Maple Run, in the state of Vermont, yes. Great summary. Thanks, Charlie. Other questions or concerns? Jack?
Charlie, did you say that we did or did, were you trying to say that we did or did not have an impact on facilities?
I said we did have an impact on facilities.
Right.
In that,
because I think we've impacted it over the years because a lot of schools in Vermont and elsewhere defer their maintenance of their facilities.
Yeah.
And then you get to the point where we are, and we're going to probably get a report a little bit later here about, one of our buildings and stuff, that it's not really lack of consideration, it's not the first thing we look at unless something happened.
Yeah, and I'd be like, I mean, that's the same thing, on a much smaller scale, that's what I deal with in my house is when something breaks, can I afford to fix it now or what's gonna happen later? But it only affects 4 people in my house, as opposed to 2,000 plus in the district, so.
Right. Thank you.
Jack has a question?
Yeah, I sort of wanted to make a statement based on what you said earlier about this being a statewide educational funding system. And when I talk with people in my neighborhood or at church or in the circles I go in, most people think of the old-fashioned way of budgeting where the local school system controls whatever happens in the local system, that goes directly to the tax. And I need to, emphasize to people that what happens is we can do a whole lot, and we should do a whole lot to keep our budget down. But we need to have all schools do that. Because if we work very diligently at keeping our costs down, other school systems that have higher costs, now some might, if they have mold in their school and they have this and that, their spending has to occur to make schools safe for kids. But if another school system is just expanding their budget willy-nilly, that can have an impact on us. So it's not a direct link between our budget and the local tax system. And it's hard for people to understand that, especially veteran Vermonters who are used to what you do in your local school means my tax bill gets higher or lower, So we all need to just emphasize that when we're discussing this stuff. And it's good that we're having all this so we understand it to whatever extent we can. But it's just very difficult to get people to understand that we can do everything we can, and we should. In my opinion, it's out there that we need to really be conservative in creating next year's budget. But it really depends on other schools too, other school districts. So that was it.
Just to add a quick thing to that is, like the fact that the need to educate folks on that is very essential, and also like the more we find out, it's worth remembering that a lot of it, like we're learning way more about the budgeting process than than our neighbors. Our neighbors know. Like in the last budget cycle, I heard CLA so many times that I thought that everyone knew CLA, and then when I mentioned it to folks, they were completely mystified by it, because the things that we hear over and over and over, we're internalizing. So it's valuable to know that it's not a shared language with everyone. What we find out here has to be disseminated in terms that folks not sitting in the meetings are going to be able to understand.
Anybody else?
I was just going to echo what Jack said about that. I think as a board, and one of our goals is to continue communication with the parents and the community. I think we should take it on ourselves to educate. And I don't know what fashion is it, like newsletters out? Is it sending them? Is it having forums? Is it, I don't know, maybe on open house night having a booth there and speaking just to the community? Because this is new for me in reading this, and a lot of our parents don't have the access to, or don't realize they have access to these amazing resources to understand it. And so I think it's up to us as a board, we want our budget to pass, to go out to the community and actually educate. I like Charlie did sit-ins in Chapel. that's great, but how can we bring it to the schools for, if the parents are already there for whatever reason, how can we talk to them at that point in time instead of making them go out of their way, to go towards them and educate them? Because that is one of our big goals in our school board.
So Bill, going to the boards, the report,
Yeah.
that spreadsheet, are we, my understanding is properly to say that our next board meeting, right, the week
Yeah.
3 of September, that we should begin talking about personnel?
Well, it's more about like, when I take those drivers that we were talking here on a state level, what does that mean for Maple Run? So if we looked at personnel, what's our total percentage in Maple Run right now?
Yeah.
What do we know, like if we did a back of the envelope calculation of, we take the personnel, we know what we're assuming for, what we know for salary increases, and maybe use that as an assumption, and say what we know for health benefits, what's that do to our costs? So not making any decisions, but just.
I don't mean decisions, I mean
Yeah,
asking questions.
Yeah, right, and
Coming with
understanding,
questions.
so I was gonna take the exact same categories that were right in here, and basically write a little, or have some bullet point narratives for each of them, what does it mean for Maple Run? So you had some, for lack of better terms, or rules of thumb, you know how they gave you a rule of thumb, like if you increase 1%
Yeah.
in overall cost for personnel, that's 11 million. If we had 1% on Maple Run salaries, what does that mean? So some pretty easy back the envelope type pieces. So we take this and say, so now what does that mean for Maple Run?
I'm talking about it in terms of, I'm also talking about in terms of when we'll have those conversations.
Yep, so then if you look at October, we're gonna start looking at class sizes and what we have for staffing configurations right now. So that's what staffing guideline and targets is, how we're configured. And where do we wanna be?
Okay.
Alright? And you'll see that we're doing that, some of that in the education session on the 16th. So the board has some time to digest it, and then we can have a conversation.
Okay. Good. Yeah, because I don't want to just have a conversation. Okay.
We're trying to, the whole
I know
idea,
that
the whole idea is that starting November, we start setting some targets.
Right, right.
And one of the things Charlie said to me, he goes, Bill, I want to start doing some modeling. Not knowing what we would cut, but what if we did, or what we would add, but if we said this percentage, or we said this, what's that do to the tax rate? What's that do for our current budget? And those are just taking some really big assumptions, because we don't start really getting data until December 1st, and we can start to build our budget. But we can do some quick assumptions, but they are pretty big assumptions. I can tell you, Bree and I have had several conversations just in the past week, and she's about to give you something, but I wanted things that she's still telling me this week we're still assuming for fiscal year 25, because we don't have the data yet around costs. And so that's just how a budget has to run. You can't have everything to that detail. And you all know that, but it's just, it gets as we get closer and closer into the fiscal year, it becomes more clear. And if you see something here that says there's not enough time to think between presentation and time for the board, I love that feedback.
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm trying to respect the board and trying to say, let's give you something, have some think time, discuss it, and then we can make those types of decisions. So we're being thoughtful and deliberate about it.
Well, just like, going back to what that document says, what our responsibility is, right?
Yeah.
Sorry. just
That's
getting
okay.
Down to it. Scrolling. Board provides the superintendent with high-level budget guidance or budget parameters, including previously stated district priorities and goals. So we just have to, people have to have that information, understand that information, and be able to provide that high-level guidance.
Yeah, and I truly believe in that, what you just said. I'm right there with you.
Okay. I don't think we're there yet.
No, I don't think we're there.
I don't think we're gonna be there in 3 weeks.
No, I think we're gonna be there in the
So-
middle of November as we start looking at different models and what does that mean?
Okay. And I guess I would just say that I wonder if we need to have more homework provided or, to do foundational education prior to then for people to really be able to be ready to have these, exchanged conversations.
I like that. For what I need from the board, for that is to know what questions you have. I don't need to know what you think you need because you may not know what you need. But if you have questions, I need to know the questions because then we can say, okay, so let's learn about this.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes it's hard to know what I really want to ask, but the easiest, simpler questions are the best ones to ask. It's not, don't try to get complex. For me, one of the best things, and Charlie, sorry, I keep going back to the conversation we had on Monday, but Charlie's like, I think we need to have like 3 or 4 models going. And what does that mean? If we went with this type of budget, this type of budget, and this type of budget. And what's that mean towards the goals and where we're trying to go for our kids?
And I'd also like to see examples of other districts who successfully cut their budgets and what they did. Because our staffing line is so big, the direct instruction, it doesn't seem ideal to cut teachers, but if there's a way to reorganize, I don't even know if this would save money, but if city became K-4 and town was a middle school, would that
I can tell you right now, you can save money with that. Because you can have different class configurations. When I get you, I don't have the class size information in yet, but looking at last year, there's a good chance that you could say, well, wait a minute, do we need all those classrooms? Does that mean a reduction in staff? Yes, it does. But you can get your class sizes and you can distribute things differently. But we have to model all that, and that's not easy to model.
Right.
To say definitely what I just said, is that a definite yes? I don't know that that's a definite yes.
Right.
Does my intuition say that's a thing to go look at? Yes. But to staff that and build that up, I just uttered a couple weeks worth of work for some principals.
Right, yeah, so if there's existing examples out there of schools who've done it successfully, because otherwise, I don't even know where to start without thinking.
But that's the type of question to ask. Yes, I don't know where to start, but are there different models to look at that might give us better operational efficiency? And not thinking stuck in the configuration that we're in. Because you asked about the configuration of schools. We wouldn't know that until we built. You have to build the models. I've done that before under Act 46, and until we built the model, and it took a lot of principal time because they had to think about actually operating it personnel. That took that because otherwise it's just estimates or rules of thumb. Is it really money or not?
Right.
And this district has saved a lot of money with the consolidation. We've seen that. Then compared to where we probably would have gone.
So maybe it would be a good idea for us to generate, maybe we could do that through you. Erin, if we could generate some kind of document, so not like an exchange document, but where we could put some FAQs on there, and then I think once people see some questions, it might inspire other questions as well. I just think that it can be really overwhelming and daunting for a new person to generate these kinds of questions without seeing maybe others. I don't know how that could work, but if something like that could be put together.
Might I suggest, for the folks who went through the budget process last year, if we could come up with things that, questions I wish I had known last year.
Sure.
That might be a decent starting point.
Are we allowed to come up to create a document that we can all add to?
We can create a document that Erin keeps, and you send in questions, and you can keep sending new versions of it. We can, by under Vermont open meeting law, it can't be like a Google Doc.
Yep. Is that okay with you, Erin?
So, what did we just do?
As well, please.
Did we just ask somebody to do something? What did we do?
please feel free to correct me if I'm, we're asking Aaron to come up with a document that that can, basically, recording questions that we have about the budget process. So we would send something to Aaron saying, please add this to the document, and then he would add that for use at future meetings.
And it's questions to help drive information that the board may need or have as we go through the budgeting process. And I said, because, you know, the exchange Joanna and I were having was around what type of information, and it's really like, what questions do you think of? And Jess gave a great example with school configuration. How would that impact the budget? You know, what do we know about that?
Right.
And so getting those down on a document, because that can help us plan agendas and the budget work that we're going to do.
So the board's all in agreement that they want that? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okey-doke.
Just have one other question. This isn't something we can control, but is there any advocacy at the state level to stop public tax money from being sent to private high schools?
There is. There's advocacy for that, and there's advocacy for keeping it going.
Seems like it'd be a smaller group.
It isn't. The lobbyists from the privates outline the lobbyists from the publics.
Is that part of school choice for like the rural programs? Is that where the public?
So I want to make sure we use our definitions correctly, because
Yeah.
people think use school choice and have it mixed.
Yeah, so if you're within that area and that's one of the schools.
So I want to say it this way. When schools don't operate a grade level, they pay tuition to another school. So you hear me say pay tuition. So I use Charlotte as an example. They don't have a 9 through 12. So they pay tuition to where the students choose to go. If it's a public school, you pay the public school tuition. If it's a private school, you pay the average Vermont high school public school tuition. And that goes to where that student goes. School choice, we have a school choice law in Vermont that allows kids to go to other public high schools, and the money does not follow the child. So every January, the board sets limits on how many we allow to go out and how many we accept in from other public schools. And that's why people get that mixed up. Sorry, it's educational ease we're in right now, but that school choice really doesn't have anything with dollars flowing. The dollars are with tuition.
In the example that Jessica is talking about in terms of public dollars being used for private schools.
So in Vermont, we have many towns, we have about, I think it's about 90 towns, I may be wrong, but somewhere in that neighborhood of schools that don't operate a high school at some grade level. And so kids can opt to go to a public school, but they can also opt to go to a private school. And I'm going to forget the case that came out of Maine, but that ruled that money could go to parochial schools as well. And so there isn't a, so now private school dollars can follow kids whether they go to Rice or whether they go to I'm trying to deliberately picking some private, so Burton or St. John's Barrier Academy, or if they go to Holderness School in New Hampshire, or if they go to a private boarding school in Canada or somewhere else. That tuition has to be paid to follow that child. And that's what I understood Jess asking about.
Yeah, like if it was restricted, because it's taxpayer money, like we don't have a high school, but you could go to any public high school rather than sending it out of state or to a
I
private
lived in
school.
rural Maine and we had that option in certain towns.
Yep.
The closest high school was an academy, a private school that offered room and board.
Yeah.
But that was the closest high school for about 5 towns, and so that was the school they went to as day students instead of board students. And so I think in the rural areas of Vermont, you end up with that being the closest high school to the child, depending.
Not so much in Vermont.
Yeah.
In Maine, it's true. I worked in one of those in Maine for a
Yeah.
year.
I may be incorrect, but what you just described, I think, would be Vermont's Northeast Kingdom with the St. John's Barrier Academy. I'm from that area, and that's the situation that
So a lot of kids end up going there because that's the high school.
And so with the Northeast Kingdom School District, which is the Lyndonville area, there's 8 or 10 towns, and they have up to pre-K education and tuition down to high school.
Right. But a Sheldon student who wanted to go to Rice,
Yeah. We have to pay they have to pay the tuition now. That's the ruling that came out of Maine. I can't remember the first case Maine, but they have to pay for they don't pay for the religious part of the education. It's a different tuition, but they do pay for it. And that was the ruling that's important.
So, does that end up impacting the cost per student for the state? That number, the magic number that comes out? You know, the 19,000, whatever?
Yeah, technically, yes. How much? Probably not a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why doesn't the lottery money go to the Vermont Ed Fund like it was supposed to?
It does.
100%?
All the profits.
Good job.
Yep. All the profits.
But your words, you're choosing your words very carefully all the time.
Well, because there's expenses they have, and that expense they pay through the lottery system, but if they net, I don't know, $1 million, then $1 million goes into, but they could have expenses that are $500,000, so it's the profits. It's not every dollar that's paid on
So
the
it's-
lottery ticket.
Yeah, then that, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute, aren't there some monies that go into the Vermont Education Fund that are supposed to be designated for certain expenditures that never actually pay those expenditures? Or did I make that up?
There's a whole, what I would want to go is go get you, that's off the Vermont, off the Agency of Education's website, Nilda, of how the Ed Fund is funded. Because there are
Okay.
many different places that revenue comes from.
Okay.
That might be a good resource for all of us to have, to see how,
Okay.
how the funding's going in.
The funding for the Ed Fund?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have no idea how that works.
Yeah. Primarily, it's property tax, but
Yeah.
there are a lot of little places. There's actually set in statute that last bill it's done every year.
Well, but isn't there part of the money that we negotiate with the staff, professional and other, isn't some of that pumping into the Ed Fund at some point and then getting redistributed out of there, right?
That
Am
really
I
sets,
crossing my thoughts?
yeah, you're crossing.
It seems like a, say again?
You are I think you're making it more complex than you need to. We have expenses, whether it's a personnel expense, a supply, a field trip, busing, you name it. That all goes, the taxes are collected at the state level. That all goes through the Ed Fund to pay every piece of expense we have here. And that's true for every school system in the state of Vermont.
Okay.
We do not collect revenue at Maple Run.
Right.
Yeah, that's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, we do not collect it, the state does, they give it back to us.
But people think that. Blame us.
They'll do you good, or?
Well, I mean, I'm as good as I'm gonna be right now on this topic, I guess. Does anyone else have any questions? I mean, we're gonna be talking about stuff like this for a while, so certainly there'll be opportunities to ask your questions. Moving on, we do have a document under new business C called the FY24 budget to actual comparison is attachment 8C, and direct you to that, and I think probably Bree and Bill will talk us through that.
Bree ends up.
So, attached to you have the summary of the expenditures for FY24. So this is the last fiscal year that we're coming in, or we're just ending. There are still some expenditures that are coming through the system because of late invoices that have been sent out, all of that. But as you can see, I have listed on here the working budget versus the actual expenses. And the first 2 pages is regular ed education. The third page is special ed education and the Northwest Career and Technical Center. The Career and Technical Center has to be split out due to a different funding equation that we use. But with all of this, you'll be able to see on the 3rd page that the special
Bree,
education.
can you just hold for a second? I'm not sure everyone has this right.
Okay.
8C.
You have the budget you're on.
Yeah, and
That's what it is. 8C is the budget.
then the true up. I don't see it on yours. Can you just refresh? Yeah, here's one. I didn't see it. That's why I read it. It was not there. It was not there, but I think that's part of the refresh. Sorry, Bree, to make you wait, but I just want to make sure everyone.
Thank you. No, that's fine. Sorry, it was a late ad also. It's on here.
Are we on page 3 of that?
We're on page 3, yes. Thank you. Are we good to go?
Yeah, I think, does everyone have something they can look at the report?
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So if you look on page 3, under the special education, working to the actual, that's where all of, or most of the surplus that we have from FY24 is living. Most of that, or almost all of it, is either students who were not able to be placed last year or positions that were not able to be filled, including admin for the special ed department and quite a few paraeducator positions in the system. Looking at all of this, it looks like we will have a projected fund balance of $1.7 million. But that is also including some of the encumbrances that we have, waiting on some invoices that are coming in. Yes, and then some of the savings that I was honestly really excited about at City School with a bunch of the electricity or lighting projects that have been done. We've had electricity savings, and BFA had some natural gas savings because Len Smith signs a contract with Vermont Gas to cancel the gas, and we use propane, and it's actually a big savings that we get in return.
So one thing I want to, first of all, the board, you've all been asking for this a lot sooner than when you get in budget years, and I think of people saying, so can't we look at how we did last year with actuals to budget? We've never seen that before, so I want to publicly say thank you to Bree. She's really worked hard on trying to get this. One of the things is it hasn't gone through an audit yet, so it's still can move a little bit here or there, but Bree worked really hard, extremely hard in the past week to get this to you. And then maybe Bree, you can tell them a little bit more about the reporting that you're going to be doing to this board for keeping financial track of the system.
Yes, so my plan is to do quarterly reporting to all of you as to where we are looking, where we're going, and that will be, the next one will be on October 2nd, which will be the first quarter of the year. And I'm excited. I'm hopeful that we have all of the expenses in place. We are going to be working week and I believe next week to get all of the positions in the right spots, because there are many staff members who move from location or they move from department. So we're going to just make sure that everything is lined up so then we can give you a better accurate representation of the budget.
So,
That's great.
yeah, it's really nice to have this. We haven't had this before, so Bree, thank you so much. I will tell you that one of the things that we didn't have this before, because this takes a lot of manual work, this is not a printout out of our financial system. It should be, but we were forced to move to the state e-finance system, and now that's an option not to be. So you may see soon something about changing financial software, because this should be just push a button, get a report. It's not.
Right.
It's a lot of Excel work and hand calculation.
And I do want to point out that I am hopeful that this will look different in the future. So be on the lookout for a new layout for FY25's budget. So,
Bree, did you talk about the security services? Did I miss that when I was reading?
no, I did not mention the security services. You're talking about why the expense is more in there. So, yes. So one of the things was we had encumbered in FY24 the access control, which we have moved that to FY25. But when I was putting this together, it was still an encumbrance because we weren't sure if we were going to receive the information or not, or the invoice or not, if it was an FY24 or an FY25. So that was $150,000 right there. We were able to install more security cameras in the school. So City School just did a big camera revamp, which is amazing. So we're beefing up the security, but like cameras is all 5 falls within it, as well as hiring the school safety workers as well. Yes.
Thank you.
I meant to mention that, so thank you.
That's one that does stand out, so try to comment. You look at it like overage, most of them are under, but that one is
Yes.
a little lower.
Yes.
So kind of along those lines, is there any reasonable way to illustrate what is a one-time expense versus what is a recurring expense that we expect to carry over in the future fiscal years, or is that getting too fine in terms of reporting?
That's getting really fine in the details, really.
I suspect it has.
Yeah, yes. I mean, and with us hiring more security officers in the schools, I'm expecting it to be higher again in the future. Yes.
Okay, well, thanks for all that work, Bree, we appreciate it.
Yes,
And look forward to quarterly reports. That
absolutely.
should give us a good pulse on what's going on. Anything else under the budget to actual comparison? I don't think so, I think we've covered that. So we'll move on to new business item D. It says cell phone policy. We actually have in our packet the cell phone procedure, which explains the process that we intend to follow. And Bill, you want to address that, please?
Well, I know that the board is asked to have this as a piece on the agenda for future meetings. So that was part of why we were putting this on. So you'll see in here there's a procedure. We don't have a policy. You'll also notice that in your handout is an announcement that we sent out to parents last week that we worked on with a team, to say, what are our expectations for cell phones and other wearable devices. We should probably add that tagline as watches and earpods are all over the place. And then you'll see one of the things you heard about from the team last week was how we really narrowed down, we really combined our work across all the schools into a district handbook, so you have the excerpt in here from the district handbook around that and responsible use of technology. So, and how we use it, the summary is it's put away and turned off, is how, what the expectations are. They're a little different for 9-12 than they are for pre-K. So that's kind of a high-level brief summary at this point.
Anybody have questions or concerns about how that's written?
I guess the question would be, how's that looking?
So I will say, you know, in the actually, I was just bragging about, like, one of the highlights for the year was the first day freshmen, ninth graders came in, and I was addressing them in the gym, and there was not one cell phone out. And I said, like, couldn't be happier, right? So we always kind of start off, you can tell that they are almost, I don't want to say appreciative, that might be too much, but they always start off really kind of embracing it, and then as, you know, everybody gets a little more tired, it starts to lose, so, yeah, right. So I think the mantra for the year is around consistency, and just really being consistent about the expectation, and even the why behind, like, not just because we said so, but really like what this does to your learning and stamina and all of that. So really focusing on the why and consistency.
Thank you.
I mean, I know there's
Well,
been a
I'll
lot of
wait
talk.
the procedure.
What?
Go ahead.
I was just
I
gonna
was just
say.
gonna say, I have the procedure, but go ahead.
Okay, well, all I was gonna say, I know this has been, I mean, this is a national topic, it's a statewide topic, and one of the things that I like to think about as an educator is, I wanna teach people how to use these devices. I know some districts have gone to banning, I'm not so much banning, how far banning will really help us, because the kids are using it outside, when we have technology. I don't know what the percentage is, but I know it's really high, that more of it happens outside the district and comes into the school. That's why our HHB policy works, is if something's gonna affect the schools inside the school and happens outside, we have to tackle it, so.
I think I read this, I could be making it up though, but am I correct that on a state level, there's discussion about a statewide policy?
There was a bill that stayed on the wall in the Ed Committee about banning cell phones or having, and then that got pulled away. There was also some other technology pieces, and those got pushed back because there's plenty of testimony given about you can do that, but not only are you going to affect the students, but you're going to affect the operations of the schools. And it's about responsible use and teaching responsible use. And there's times where this is the best device to use for your learning. There's lots of times when it's not. And so it's about when do you use it.
So there's been noises, but nothing that we should be expecting to see?
Oh, it'll come back this next session.
Okay.
But that, I can't say that definitively, that sounds too definitive the way you said it, but I expect it to come back this session. And that's our Vermont way, right? To take some small piece of the ed system and then what does that do coming down? That's our citizen legislature.
Okay, so are we good with cell phone?
All right.
I'm not hearing anything, so.
Yes.
Consider us informed of the cell phone procedure. Next item is item E, central office facilities issues. And Bill's gonna take us through that.
Yes. As the board's well aware, we were looking looking at using this building as a possible location for an alternative middle school program. And we had to pull back on that as we really started to look into this building. And this building has some severe issues with it, from electrical, from code issues. We are not ADA compatible within the building anywhere, to our utilities and our, specifically our boilers are at end of life or past end of life. So our electrical system is well past end of life and end of code. So we have some severe, so I've done some work with Las Gangas a little bit to really try to look at how could we bring this building up to code. And we don't have any HVAC within this building outside of this room. And what we have in this room doesn't meet code either. So we looked at that. There's approximately about 8,200 square feet in this building. About 7,500 of it we use for office space. There's storage in the back corner. And this building is, its foundation outside of the superintendent's and business office area is up on piers because this used to be a coal shed. So there's only foundation in one small area. We do have asbestos in this building, and so with looking at all those, and having a master electrician come in and look at it, and some other trades such as plumbing and heating and ventilation, we would basically have to strip this place to the studs, which is about a $350 per square foot cost for renovation, which is looking at about a $2.8 million renovation for this building. So what I kind of want to ask or do, I'm not sure which way I'm saying this, it's kind of like what you just did, Jack. I don't know if this is a statement of what I'm going to do at the next meeting or a question that you should be asking me, but is to come with different options for this board to look at as possible solutions, and looking at what could we do to, what's the best short-term and long-term cost. We just spent a whole long discussion on budget, so what does that look like by taking into account we've got to do something for this central office space, and what could that be? So I wanted to inform the board of where we're at in this building and that we've got some major issues that we have to look at. It was known, remember from Kevin Durth telling me, he said, we knew when we bought it we had issues. I'm not sure to the level of issues that were known. We still owe $100,000 on this building. The mortgage is a zero interest mortgage that's owned by the previous owner. That was the agreement when the merger happened, and approval to buy this building. So you would have options anywhere from renovating to selling to leasing, and I can bring some of those options if the board would like to look at that in the next meeting.
Yes, please.
Is this considered to be like an educational building in terms of like being able to access educational grants for some of the facilities renovations that need to happen?
There are no grants that would affect.
I don't know if they're asbestos, like.
So we could get
environmental.
about the only thing we might be able to get for is Efficiency Vermont, if we were able to, but they're really small. Like we're using them on the current renovations we're doing at BFA, and we might be getting $25,000, $50,000 on a $4 million project.
Okay.
Will that prohibit this building being used for the alternative program?
We're not going to use this for the alternative
Okay.
program. We just went out with a request for proposal for lease space in St. Albans this week. And we had talked about that at the last meeting. So that is out there, but I think we need to talk about what we do next for central office and for the folks that work in this building.
So as far as short-term and long-term plans for the building, is that all contingent on what we end up doing for the alternative school, or are these two separate issues that can be looked at separately?
There are two separate issues that we can look at separately. That's why I felt comfortable going out with the RFP based on our discussion at the last meeting. For the alternative program, would it be not? It could be advantageous to be near each other, but it's not a necessity. And so what I want to do is I would like to bring to the board next time some options to look at the fiscal numbers on what different options mean and what does it mean short-term and long-term, since we do know we have like a challenging budget season to look at, and what does that mean and how can we educate people?
Yeah,
Issues.
yeah, that would be great.
No, Bill, when you just said that it would be ideal if it could be advantageous if they were near each other, do you mean the alternative school and the other schools, or the alternative school and the administrative, central office? Excuse me. I don't see any.
Yeah, there's not, there isn't much that says they have to be like right next to each other.
Again.
Or within a half mile of the alternative school and central office.
Okay, yeah, I don't think that they need to be near each other, but I do think the alternative school needs to be accessible to the other schools.
Yes, and we said that when we were putting that together, that we wanted it as central to both town and city as possible, and we still know we need to have a van for that school to be able to support that piece. But the more centralized that is, the better it is.
Right? Okay. Any more discussion on central office facility issues? Okay, moving on to other business warrants. I need a motion to approve the warrants, acknowledging that passage of this motion will act as authorization and signature of any individual board members participating remotely. Please.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second. Oops.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, let's take our vote. Amanda?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Joanne? No.
Yes.
Harley?
Yes.
Mary Ann?
Yes.
Nakuma?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Neil says yes. Joanne, I wrote your name without the A at the end, so I read it.
It's all right, I've heard them all.
Sorry.
Johanna, Joan, Joanne.
Okay, so warrants passed. Next item is the superintendent report. Bill?
Yes, I want to say that we've had a tremendous start to the school year. I always get the opportunity to spend a lot of time the first week out and about. I deliberately schedule myself that way. And my report is from talking to kids and students and leadership team members, or kids and students and staff and leadership team members, is that there's this positive, calm, confident vibe that I'm receiving and hearing that, sorry, just so that I'm seeing out there in the schools, and I'm hearing from others of the same thing. And that there's just this, there's a really, that it is, and I really think those three words, that positive, calm, confidence, like we've got this year, is there. Can I say there are issues, but it's kind of, I say this, as I was talking with Kelsey earlier today, like that's our work. That's the work we do. And it's the work we do with kids, and it's just really nice to see, and I see that everywhere I'm at. I'm hoping I'm not seeing the world through rose-colored glasses, but I prefer, if I am, so be it. But that's what I'm seeing out there. So it's just been a great start to the year. I think one of the things that's really helped us with that is the leadership teams really got into message, and part of it was the way we started the school year. For convocation, I had 35 to 40 staff members help put convocation together, which was just really centered around, there were three big goals. Work across schools and do something with people that you don't usually do something with every day in your school building. Celebrate our successes. We've had some great successes in student data. You've all heard about that. And what we're hearing qualitatively too in stories. And three, know our district goals. And so at convocation, teams of teachers work together to do fun activities together, but at the end they had to solve a riddle, and the riddle was about the district goals. So then we had food trucks come and provide lunch. We always provide lunch. We've done that with the Abbey in the past, and people love the food trucks, and it just made everyone, it just really helped that positive vibe. And the way they got to get their lunch was they had to solve the riddle, which was about the district goals. And that, all those hints were in the morning, the day, and the kids did a great performance about appreciating the teachers and the work they did. And I had so many teachers come up to me and say, that was great what the kids did. A really nice way to say thank you for what you did for your job. So it's really, really, really positive. I want to let you know the mission and vision that has been going out. We have 30 people that have given us feedback so far. You heard from Dr. Jen Williamson that she was one of them tonight, but we'll be putting that out and we'll bring all that back to you at the next meeting. So, get tracking all that.
Is that only on, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
maybe I missed it originally, but is that only on social media, or is this being directly sent?
It's out on, I've seen it on school announcements, the link to it. I've seen it out through social media, Facebook, Instagram. I think it went out once already through Bright Arrow to all the parents and families through an email, but I'll ask Aaron to make sure we do that again. We're trying to put it out at least once or twice a week. I know it's on all the school announcements. I've seen it as I've been reading it. But here's the link to it.
So only 30 people have filled out?
Yeah, only people. We'll keep pushing.
We gotta offer like a raffle.
That's what helped in the competition. We had a raffle, and I should say, that's the other thing. I'm glad you said that, because we had like 60 businesses, and Judy, Megan, and Kelsey are champions. Like, anytime you need door prizes, just ask them. Especially Judy. She'd keep coming. I got more stuff. I'm like, all right, great.
Would you say no to Judy?
No, I wouldn't say no. Good question, Tricia. Put the right people in the right one, right? Couple other things just to last to go on. We can't certify our Chromebooks after 5 years. Google Chrome will not certify that they'll keep operate. They still do operate, but they don't keep the operating system on the Chromebooks. You can't use it for testing. You can't use it for school. So we can try to sell these, but they're really not worth much to sell that any manufacturer is going to buy back or any recycler. So we put those out to distribution to parents. We've had quite a few. We'll keep seeing it. So if you know of anybody that needs a Chromebook, it basically works for Google Docs, and that's about it, and email, but it's a good device, and we've been handing those out to folks that need them. So, and I know Aaron's been out publicizing that as well. We currently have, I would also say that you all should have received information on the hours of operation of our pre-K. That was a question that was asked that I couldn't give you at the last board meeting. We sent out that email. We have, I do want to say under legislation, we only have to offer 10 hours per week. This district has been a forerunner in pre-K for years. And so we offer anywhere from besides the tech center where it's integrated into the students' learning that are in health and human services, those are 10-hour pre-Ks, and we've always had those two that way. But in the other, we go anywhere from 28 hours down to 19 hours. So there's a range. We offer way more than we do for the way above the 10 hours. And I was just talking to the parent yesterday, who's a Fairfield parent. I was at Rotary having lunch, and she was talking about, is there any way you can provide more time because of the amount of time back and forth to try to get the kids? I understand that. But I know that we're doing pretty well on that. So you have that. And then the last thing is second to last thing is our current positions. We're down to 11 11 professional positions, 12 ESP positions, and 5 alternative program. We're still hiring some of those. Some of those are, to give you an idea of some of the certified positions, is like a 1-year buildings trade instructor, but we have someone that's going into an interview process for that. To a technology integration specialist or a math interventionist. You know about the one, your French teacher, and a couple special educators and a speech language pathologist.
Can you be more specific about the alternative program, please?
Yep, we are missing 2. We're still looking for 2 classroom teachers and a director for that program, and 2 behavior interventionists.
Okay, so the other, that didn't work out. I thought there was a director.
There was a director possibility. We were looking for one at the high school for special education director. We've had that position open for 2 years. We have not been able to fill
No, we were talking about the alternative program.
Right, so the alternative program, we're still looking for a director. I know that they're in the interview process for those. That hasn't finished it hasn't gotten to the place where the position's been offered.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry.
that's okay.
And the last thing is, though, I told you that we released an RFP for alternative space. That will come in on September 23rd. So most likely we're going to need a special meeting of the board on September 25th to look at those bids and award that for the alternative space.
Thank you. Any board announcements? Joanna?
It's not an announcement, but it's I guess, it's a statement of concern, and it could just be of not enough information. But I'm hearing, we're putting an alternative program in for middle school, and I also heard that we're hiring more safety officers for schools. I guess I just want to hear more about that, to understand that better. Making sure that the people who become safety officers, it doesn't bleed into pseudo SROs that we decided not to have in the schools because of a whole host of issues, and making sure that these individuals are getting their proper training. We've talked about how difficult it is to hire people, hire skilled people, and are we making sure that we are putting skilled people into these positions that will not cause the problems that we experienced in the past and that we do not want to experience. So, talking about the budget, yet we're talking about hiring more positions, and I guess I just didn't realize that we were continuing to hire safety officers in the schools, whatever you want to call them, safety personnel. Now, and I heard you say security officers. I just think that, I think it might warrant another conversation, making sure that everybody's on the same page and that it's in line with our goals.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, the other thing that's on here is just a reminder about board reflections. If there's something that you attend and you're willing to write up a board reflection sheet on it, we appreciate those. And this would be the opportunity to speak to them if we had some to speak to. Agenda for future meetings, cell phone usage, we've got class size policy, we need to address that soon, but that's coming with some of our budget work, right, Bill?
Yes.
And then we have supports for new staff, and then budget. And anything else we need to add to that?
Joanna just asked if you can learn more about the safety officers stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote that down.
Oh, just add an
I wrote that
officer.
down.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, safety officer, we'll get a safety officer update that will encompass some of the questions that Joanna brought up and stuff.
And maybe just airing the questions that might be sent over to Erin that the board generates in terms of, for the budget.
Okay. Yeah, that should be sort of ongoing, right?
Yeah, but if we can't see that live document, then we could hear the questions, which again might just help people generate more.
And as I said, I think it's something we can do through collect them
Awesome.
weekly, send it back, say, hey, this is what we have for questions right now.
Oh, cool, okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
Right.
We just can't have a live document. We can do that.
No need for executive session tonight. Any other business to come before the board? Hearing none, adjourn the meeting at 7:50. Thank you all very much. Great discussion.